Thanks for joining me this morning, Joe.
You're welcome. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, even if it's, a little bit removed.
Yeah.
So can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your involvement with the creative arts?
Yeah, sure. I'm a writer, mainly a poet, published by Salt and Smokestack. I'm a publisher. I have a small poetry press called Blueprint Poetry Press. I run events, although I'm not doing much of that at the moment. But over the years, I've run events in Darlington that are to do with poetry and music and so on. So, yeah. And I also blog occasionally and write short stories. But, I guess, number one, I'm a poet, I guess.
Brilliant. So has this always been the way? Was poetry in you as a child? Did you come from a creative background? How did
No. My mum was pretty creative, and she wrote sort of odd little pieces that I found like years later. So she had something going on, and we all read like lunatics in our house, mainly because it was, it was an escape route, shall we say. So yeah, we did a lot of reading. But no, I thought I was a novelist. I thought I would be a novelist. I mean, obviously, I didn't think I'd be a writer at all, ever. That wasn't something that was in my milieu. Nobody earned a living at writing. That's not what you did. So I was a teacher, and I was writing at weekends or, whenever. I had two little kids, and I was writing a massive novel, a massive kind of going to make my fortune blockbuster World War II novel, which took about 8 years. And while I was doing that, I was also writing poetry, sort of in the margins of this massive novel, and sending them out and getting them published, which was odd. So that was going on, but no, I'm going to be a novelist. Anyway, I wasn't a novelist.
That's really interesting, actually, because obviously you taught one of the modules when I was doing my MA at Teesside University. And yeah, it was like growing up, I always thought that's what you did if you were a writer, you wrote novels. And it was so frustrating during that MA to think, you know what, I'm never going to write a novel. That's just not where I'm at all.
I mean, seriously, life is a bit too short. I mean, I love novels. I love reading them, but it's the energy required and the stamina. And also, you invest a lot in a novel, don't you? The time. And then the chances of it getting published are quite slim, actually, like most writing. But somehow that's hard when you spent so many years of your life writing something, and you have an agent and you think you can get published, and then you're not. So I couldn't deal with that, I think. And also by then I'd been drawn into the skill of the short. I wrote short stories as well. I mean, I've come second a couple of times in the Sid Chaplin competition. So I like the short form. Yeah. But I mean, poetry it's probably what I should always have been, really. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, like some of the short stories that I wrote for you in that forming fiction school, I've later gone on to distill them down into poems.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's really interesting. Yeah. Well, you're a great short story writer, actually.
Oh, thank you so much indeed.
Yeah.
I guess because I've always thought of myself more as a performer than a paper writer, and so you can't, it's kind of hard to perform snappy little, even if there have to be micro fictions to really get up there and perform them.
Yes, that's interesting too. Yeah.
Question I always like asking, like, why be a writer? Why is art, why are the creative arts important? What do they do for you? Why do you engage with them, and what part do you think they play more widely in society?
Well, from my own point of view, it's just because I can't not. So, it's as simple as that. There isn't really a question there. And I've always, even as a child, written things. It's just that I never thought that you could actually turn this into anything to do with real life. It was in the imaginary world. So I think for me, it's always been partly, I'm quite a private person in many ways, but that's a way of expressing all those other selves that never get an airing. And also, I mean, poetry is a magical form, I think, where if you're lucky and if it's going well, something, I hesitate to use the word muse because it's been so abused, hasn't it? But something happens and you're just as happy as you're ever going to be. So that's why you do that. And also, I mean, I enjoy editing. I like messing about with what I've done, and I like all of that whole process of words and messing about with them and the transformational qualities that they have. So I love all of that. I mean, in the world at large, you like to think that no society that calls itself civilized isn't absolutely dedicated to the arts, but that's not always the way, is it? And I think creative writing should be taught in schools from very little. I know it is actually in many ways for very little, and then there's a whole tranche where it isn't. So ways to express not just words, but music, and music is almost as important to me, I would say, as poetry. And I think maybe the two art forms are related. I mean, I'm not musical, but I adore music, and it's very important to me. So yeah, that too. I mean, the release, but the creativity, the imagination, the soothing and healing, all of that. Why not that all the time, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that I've really sort of thought about quite a bit over the 6 months is whether there even was human consciousness before art, or I mean, from one thing like that, the sound of the womb, like we're born with music. It's like fundamental part of our being even before we're born. And we're finding older and older art suggesting that since humankind's been able to make a mark, it's doing so, and it's
really fascinating, isn't it, that in art, that kind of representation, that need to look at your world differently. There it is, but here it is also, and that's amazing, isn't it? And the music thing, and I hadn't thought about the womb thing, but you're probably right. That's how we're made inside music. Yeah,
absolutely. And to music we will return. So I guess I have to ask the lockdown question. How's it affected your work? Have you found you've got loads of time to create and that's great, or have you been a bit kind of stalled by it?
At the beginning, because last year I was supposed to spend, I had a Finland residential lined up. So I was going to be in Finland for a month, learning various kinds of creative practice and just having all that Finnish time to myself. And that didn't happen. So I had to get over that disappointment, I guess, at first. So, it's not like I haven't got lots of time. Here I am, and there's acres of it. And yet, it all kind of slips through your fingers in a funny kind of way, doesn't it? But yeah, I mean, Blueprints hacking on. We managed to get 2 pamphlets out last year, and Matthew Cayley's pamphlet's coming out now. So we've managed to do that. God knows how, honestly. And because it's been difficult, you've got to go to the printers and all of that, and just proofs coming out and not being able to actually be there in the room with the printer and say, no, I want it thus, to try and some things it's very difficult to do, I think, when you're not actually with somebody. And I miss events. I miss people, poetry events, being in rooms with people. I miss dancing, I miss live music, God. But I'm writing, doing what I normally do. I mean, all of that stuff is what I normally do anyway. It's just there's that thing missing, and it makes me sad. And obviously I miss my daughters, who are both in London, and that's other family, and yeah, it's grim.
Yeah,
could be worse, Lisa, could be dead.
I know, I do kind of think, God, how entitled we are. Like, for some people, their life's a permanent lockdown. It has been from the moment they were born. For some people, like, the idea that there's any kind of permanence or anything that you can rely on in this world just doesn't exist for them. It's like so many people's minds blown, and I understand why they are, but you kind of think, I think if you're young, fair enough, but I think if anyone sort of their mid-20s or older should be capable of spending time with themselves. And if they're not, then they might kind of think about what their company's like. I don't know. That might be a bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess, you know, you forget if you're somebody who kind of enjoys your own company and is really used to the solitary, you forget there are people in this world for whom that is just really weird.
Yeah.
It's strange, isn't it?
Absolutely. But that said, yeah, I do miss it all. And I'm kind of hoping we can come back with a bang. The intention is down at the auxiliary when we can, to have an event that involves all 250 interviewees, so that we will have in the morning kind of workshops and seminars building up to an afternoon of performance, and then moving into like a great big party in the evening. And so we'll be sort of beaming party. Yeah, we got a new sound system down there.
Woo.
We had a 5-person party when we were allowed to. It was absolutely incredible. So yeah, who knows?
Last gig I went to was fortunately not so, I mean, it was about in February last year. So it's about a year ago, and it was at the Cobalt Studio in Newcastle. And it was tiny, but it was like an Afro Colley band.
Wow, nice.
So it was bonkers, and it was great, you know. That again, I hope I, you know, should I live so long?
Yes, let's be grateful for what we have got every day.
Yeah.
It's been a real pleasure to speak to you, Jo, and I look forward to seeing you out there at some point when all is over.
Thanks for taking the time. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, and you, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Look after yourself. Bye for now.